We are back on the road to City Hall, where it's time to talk about one of the hottest races in the upcoming election. There are millions of dollars being spent to influence its outcome, and it's a contest without any candidates. I'm talking, of course, about a statewide referendum on Tuesday's ballot that would permit 7 new casinos to be built in the state, but not in New York City. Governor Cuomo has been leading the charge in favor of the referendum, but the New York Times and the New York Post editorial boards both oppose it. So does the Daily News, as a matter of fact. Tonight, I'm joined by a supporter of the proposal, Peter Ward, the president of the city's Hotel Trades Council, which is an opponent, which is supporting it. We have an opponent. David Blankenhorn is the president and co-founder of the Institute for American Values. They're a think tank. And John Sabini is here. He's the former chair of the state's Racing and Wagering Board, who wants more casinos to be built, but he has some concerns about the ballot proposal. And of course, he is a former state senator as well. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here. And let's start with you, Peter Ward. What's the case for casinos? I mean, we often hear a lot of different sort of arguments that, well, people are going to Atlantic City anyway, or people are going to Foxwoods. In your mind, what's the case for it?
There's a couple of reasons. First, I agree with the notion that there are any number of consistent gamblers in New York State that go out of New York State and spend their dollars, and that money would be better spent here, and that the tax revenue would be better spent in our schools than in another state's schools. I also think that the job creation should be here. But look, to me, it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think that it's unfortunate that we live in a country where the alternatives to economic growth are gaming and not manufacturing. But those decisions have been made for us by Washington, D.C. And so the policies that have completely eroded our blue-collar jobs have an enormous impact on New York State. And it seems like this is one of the few places where we can go to create a new industry that has the potential to provide profit to owners, to create solid middle-class jobs, and to broaden the tax base for schools and to reduce the burden of property taxes. So for those reasons, I support gaming. Mm-hmm. And we recently organized the workers in Genting, which is out at Aqueduct. Yeah. And we established our first contract this Monday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, workers at that casino were making $10 an hour last week. This week, they'll go to $20 an hour on average, and they'll have full family health care, pension, holidays, sick days, and personal days. And by 2016, they'll have an average of $30 an hour as their wage. So 1,500 New Yorkers who mostly live in Queens have gone from the margins of our economy to the middle class in the snap of a finger.
You're going to be a very popular guy in a lot of households this Thanksgiving and Christmas, Peter Ward. But David Blankenhorn, you have written extensively about how the prosperity that he so eloquently laid out comes at a price. What's that price?
It doesn't produce the prosperity. All of the studies show that casino gambling does not contribute to economic growth. Now, my friend Peter is right in that if you build a casino, it provides jobs for the people who build the casino and the people who work in the casino. That's true. But economists look at something different. They say, does the activity contribute to the society economically overall? And with casinos, the answer is no. Overwhelmingly, by the way. Overwhelmingly, the studies show this. Why? 2 reasons. One, casinos don't produce anything. If your people work in a restaurant, they make hamburgers and waffles. Or they do something useful. If they work in a manufacture tires, they make tires. Casinos don't produce anything. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Samuelson said that casino gambling was a sterile economic activity. It doesn't produce anything.
And an entertainment experience for some.
It takes money out. And let me finish. There's a second reason. It's sterile because all it does is transfer money from one pocket to another without producing a good or a service. The second reason casinos do not contribute to economic growth is that they produce social problems that have economic costs. That's why the most prominent independent scholar who's looked at this, his name is Earl Grinnells, he's a respected economist, he surveyed all the evidence, and he said that the economic disadvantages of casinos consistently outweigh the advantages. Now, what we're hearing at campaign time and we might even hear some of this right here tonight, is big promises about this many jobs and this many dollars and this and that and the other. And these are kind of rosy assertions from the interested parties. If you look at the actual evidence, casino gambling does not contribute to economic growth.
Okay, we are going to continue this discussion in just a minute, and I'm going to get Senator Sabini in this and get the view from the lawmakers, actually, who ultimately did pass this. We're going to do that in just a moment. Later on tonight, Joe Lhota was a top deputy under Rudy Giuliani, but the former mayor has yet to campaign for the Republican nominee ever since the primary. We're going to ask why with Curtis Sliwa and Herson Barrero. They want to know, like the rest of us, where's Rudy? That's all in the political rundown. Stay with us.
In a city with as many papers as New York, nobody has time to read them all, except for us.
Here's a look at what's in the morning papers.
We comb the papers from front to back to scope out the stories we think will catch your interest.
We want to start with the Daily News.
And they're not always the headlines.
An interesting follow-up story in the paper this morning. It's on page 18.
Join us every morning for New York One's take of what's in the papers. In the Papers on New York One is an exclusive service of Time Warner Cable.
It takes people with real knowledge to build and maintain a race car. Polymers, hydrocarbons, thermoplastics, math and science, you bet it is. Many kids don't understand how important these subjects can be. That's why Time Warner Cable developed Connect a Million Minds to introduce kids in our communities to opportunities that inspire them to develop these important skills. How can my car go faster? Maybe your child will figure it out. Find out more at connectamillionminds.com.
Well, there's nothing else like it. It's live. So you have 30 people on a stage, you have 1,000 people in an audience, and for 2 hours, you're all having the same experience. There's energy pouring from the stage, there's energy pouring from the audience, and it's a pure escapism from night to night. It changes, and so it's this, like, amoeba of energy and fabulousness that's ever-changing and always different, and can be completely transporting.
Welcome back to the Road to City Hall, where we are talking about the pros and cons of the statewide casino referendum with Peter Ward from the Hotel Trades Council, David Blankenhorn from the Institute for American Values, and John Sabini, the former chair of the state's Racing and Wagering Board. And Senator, how do you sort through this? I mean, let me just start by saying, you know, for every day that you served in the state Senate, there was a state constitutional provision in place that's been there for over 100 years, I guess, saying there should be no gambling in New York, and it seems like it's everywhere.
Well, there should be no casino gambling in New York is the provision, and in 1978, when Governor Brendan Byrne in New Jersey walked up to the crap table at Resorts International in Atlantic City, they were the outlier. Since then, virtually every state around us, also tribal gaming, has flourished, and New York is now the outlier. And so all this amendment really does is get us to point A, which is an important point to be. Mr. Blankenhorn said casinos don't provide anything like a restaurant provides consumable goods. Over 60% of the revenue in most new casinos now goes for entertainment, food, concerts, shopping. The idea that casinos are just become money-sucking machines to take money out of people's pockets is out of date. Casinos are now destination places where people go to have a night of entertainment.
Let's nail that down as a factual question, because I've always heard that it's the slots that make all of the money for every casino.
That's changing.
Casino everywhere.
That's changing. As a matter of fact, the trend in Las Vegas has been recently to replace slots with some table games. I think part of the allure of shows like Entourage have gotten younger people to accept casino gaming more. In fact, if you look at polls, Peter Hart did a poll last year that said that I believe it was 89% of people under the age of 39 accept casinos as part of everyday life.
80% of the revenue comes from slots. It's a well-known fact. More than 75% of the floor space of all casinos is devoted to slot machines. It's a well-known fact. I'm sorry.
All I'm saying is
this is the issue. No, it's actually changing. It's going more towards slots.
I would disagree.
It's not a question of having an opinion. It's a question of what the facts are. The facts are more and more casinos are devoting more and more floor space, and more of their revenue comes from slot machines.
Look, I think it's a well-known fact that in Vegas, the majority of their revenue is generated from food and beverage and entertainment, not from gaming. And I would just like to point out and go back to one simple fact, which is this. We have a state and a city where a considerable amount of people live below the poverty level. We have an opportunity here to create an industry. And if it's done right, we will create an industry that flourishes, creates job opportunities, moves people into the middle class, and allows for our tax base to expand so that our schools can get money and so that property taxes can shrink. This may not be a perfect solution to New York's economic woes, and it is certainly not a panacea, but it is one of the only opportunities I've seen in my 30 years in the hotel industry where we have the chance to create out of whole cloth an industry that provides significant economic development in the state of New York.
I've got a question for you, Senator. I mean, you must have seen this because there's a ton of studies, and he's published a lot of them, or referred to them, that gambling, like the casinos, the gambling activity, even if you just want to wall that off from the entertainment, it depends on a very small number of people who are problem gamblers. They are generating a huge amount of the revenue.
1/3 of all Americans in the year 2012 visited a casino during that year. Not 1/3 of all Americans are not problem gamblers. That's just not the case. There are a percentage.
Nobody said it was 1/3.
Let's parse the numbers a little bit. One third go, but they're like me. They go maybe twice a year and spend $300-400.
That's enough to float everyone's boat at this point, though.
But for the casinos, where they're really making their money, is there 1% or 2% or 2.5% who go in and just spend like crazy, thousands and thousands.
By that logic, should we close down bars?
I would
Should
say
we close down restaurants?
Also, Errol, I would say that, you know, as Peter cited, in places like Las Vegas now, most of the money's coming in from high-end dining, shopping, and entertainment venues. People, you know, the difference now between 20 years ago when none of these amendments ever passed, historically this was a bad bet. But now they're starting to pass. Why? Because every American now lives within 2 hours of a casino, just about. The great majority of Americans do. So it's become something as accepted.
So what are your remaining concerns about next week's referendum?
I think it should pass. I think the implementation going forward is important. I think if we only cite casinos hours away from the city, we're going to be in for something that's going to be almost like a mild success at best. We have to be closer than Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Atlantic City, or the tribal casinos in Foxwoods in order for the New York market to really want to go to these places, because otherwise there's going to be too much competition.
Oops. We're not supposed to say that. See, the governor says that there'll be no casinos in New York City. Except, once the constitutional prohibition is gone, then he can go back to telling the truth, which is this whole ballgame is about putting casinos in New York City. So all of this heavy breathing about jobs for upstate New York, and since casinos do not help the economy, this is not about jobs, it's not about the economy, it's not about helping your members. What it's about is generating money for the state. And where he really wants this to happen is in New York City.
Mr. Blankenhorn keeps saying it doesn't create jobs. Pennsylvania's only had legal casinos now for a few years. 11,000 jobs have been created in the state of Pennsylvania.
I didn't say it didn't create jobs. I said that you have to look. In fact, I said it does provide jobs for the people who work there. Everybody agrees on that. What people who actually look at this, not just from an advocacy point of view, wanting a special privilege, but actual analysis, what they tell you is that because casinos don't produce anything and because casinos cause social problems, the long-term contribution to the economy is negative. By the way, just one other quick point. The last time I looked, the Constitution does not prohibit restaurants, convention centers, all the spas, golf courses. All of that's perfectly legal now. We're just talking about big rooms full of slot machines that rip people off.
Okay, that is going to be the last word. And folks, this is going to be on the ballot. So if you're hearing this for the first time, you've got a little research to do. And you can thank Peter Ward and David Blankenhorn and John Sabini for taking us through part of the argument. Still to come, we're going to ask Curtis Sliwa and Herson Barrero to make some bold predictions about the upcoming election. The political rundown is next. Stay with us.
New York 1.
when you want it, we've got it. More online video than any other channel? Yep, that's us. We're NY1.com, and we're streaming video for our stories every single day.
Okay, turn over the New York 1 minute.
NY1.com. More online video, more online news.
My family has been in the travel business for 4 generations. So you could say that I was born to travel. And I bring that experience to New York 1 on Travel with Val. I'll fill you in on some great travel packages from down the street, across the country, or around the world.
Find your next destination on Travel with Val, Mondays and Thursdays on New York 1. Looking for the latest gadget, gizmo, or doodad? Look no further than the Tech Beat, weekdays on New York 1.
The Big Apple. The Empire City. The capital of the world. No matter what you call it, we bring it home like no one else, because no one else brings you New York 1. Whatever you're passionate about, we invent better ways to love it even more. Time Warner Cable. Enjoy better.
Some people might be able to judge a book by its cover, but nowadays you hardly ever see the covers. From fiction to nonfiction, so much to read in so little time. How to decide? New York 1's The Book Reader. Each week, book reviewers and editors highlight the latest page-turners. Whether you read on the train, in the comfort of your living room, or your own special place, we've got a read on what you like. The Book Reader, Wednesdays and Fridays on New York 1.
In a city with as many papers as New York, nobody has time to read them all, except for us.
Here's a look at what's in the morning papers.
We comb the papers from front to back to scope out the stories we think will catch your interest.
We want to start with the daily news.
And they're not always the headlines.
An interesting follow-up story in the paper this morning. It's on page 18.
Join us every morning for New York 1's take of what's in the papers. In the Papers on New York 1 is an exclusive service of Time Warner Cable.
We are back on the road to City Hall, where it is time for the political rundown. That's when two very opinionated people talk about 8 topics in the world of politics with just 1 minute for each subject. Here, as always, our New York 1 political commentator, Herson Barrero.
Buenas noches, and we got a preview to Halloween with Kathleen Sebelius before the House Committee. It's incredible. That's what a circus. What witches and goblins. Oh, my God.
And from radio station 970 AM, The Answer, Curtis Lewa.
Oh, just one more time to be Christine Quinn with a glow-in-the-dark orange Revlon hair. Oh, little kitties, come to my house. I'll be Christine giving you candy corns.
Okay, gentlemen, with less than a week to go until Election Day, tonight's matchup between Joe Lhota and Bill de Blasio could be the last chance for the Republican candidate for mayor to make up ground against his Democratic rival, who enjoys a huge lead in the polls. The headline is Final Debate, Curtis.
Errol, we're going to have a party in Park Slope. You're welcome. You're a buffy. Come on with all the other yuppies and hipsters, because the Red Sox, that's right, this B for Boston, Bolshevik, Brooklyn, we're going to raise the roof tonight against the Cardinals and Joe Loda. Guess what? Go back to the private sector. You're lucky I'm even going to show up. What am I, 50 points ahead of you, you schlub?
You know, the interesting part is that the final debate, which was supposed to be, yesterday, last night, scheduled by the New York City Campaign Finance Board, they really screwed up. And all of a sudden, Joe Loda and Bill de Blasio realized, oh, we could look back. Boy, they were afraid of the New York Post, of the Daily News, the actual, tabloids that would actually attack them for being insensitive. The fact is that debate should have been gone. It should have been done yesterday. They should have concentrated on that. There were all kinds of debates going on in the city, all kinds of activities. This is hypocrisy at its height, and I blame the New York City Campaign Finance Board, and then the other two bozos, one of them will be actually elected mayor next week. Unfortunately, it's a coronation. I really dislike, what hypocrisy. You guys don't care about the people, victims of Sandy.
I had
really
to fight for a living wage and for Rockaway and affordable housing, which is like an oxymoron when you think of it.
What?
And gentlemen, with Joe Loda trailing badly in the race for mayor, some are wondering why his former boss has not been seen more than once out on the campaign trail in order to rally the troops for the Republican nominee. I know you've been talking a lot about that. Where is Rudy is the topic. Herson.
Well, actually, they must not like the texting or sexting that they were doing to each other. These guys were talking to each other. He worked for him. He didn't pull out Rudy from the beginning. I tell you, Joe Loda, bad strategists, I don't care who advised you, they made a mistake. And if you listen to yourself, well, barbers don't cut their own hair. Well, in your case, you can't cut it because you don't have any hair. But the fact is, I don't have much either, so don't worry, don't be insulted. The fact is that this is the lousiest campaign I've seen. This is worse than the Fernando Ferrer campaign of 2005, and that was pretty bad.
The Fernando Ferrer, that was horrible, but you're right. Yeah, absolutely. You abandoned my compadre Cheech. He was the savior of the city, Joe Loda. Oh, you said you wanted to be like George Patton. Wasn't he divisive? You said you wanted to be like Filarello LaGuardia. Couldn't you say you wanted to be just like Rudy? And if Rudy does come out with you in the last few days of the campaign, he's going to ask for the mercy rule. You know what the mercy rule is? He's going to toss in the White Tower and say, end the election now. It's a slaughter. It's a shandar. It's a disgrazia. We love you, Rudy.
He should have used Rudy. Bad mistake.
All right, let's get to it. The de Blasio campaign is crying foul after a New York Times reporter tweeted the name of the college that Chiara de Blasio attends, saying that information creates a security risk for the now famous young lady. The headline is De Blasio's daughter, Curtis.